Welcome back to Signal and Clue. Today, we're returning to one of the most consequential geopolitical and market questions of the moment. When and how does the Iran war end? In our previous episode, we laid out the core tension at the negotiating table, the US demanding a 20-year ban on uranium enrichment, and Iran countering with a 5-year ban, plus an optional 5-year extension. That gap remains wide. But today, we're not revisiting that framework directly. Instead, we're reading 3 new signals from the past week. Signals that, at first glance, seem unrelated, but together tell a coherent story about where this conflict is heading. Let's get into it. The first signal came from an unexpected direction. Trump canceled plans for his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to travel to Pakistan for another round of negotiations. He posted on Truth Social, "Too much time wasted on traveling. Too much work." On the surface, this looks like a setback, but read more carefully and it's actually a signal of impatience, not disengagement. After sending that post, Trump reportedly told reporters that Iran had followed up with a much better offer, though he didn't specify the contents. So, what does canceling the trip actually mean? The Pakistan channel has been the primary mediation route, indirect, slow, and filtered through intermediaries. Trump's frustration isn't with the negotiations themselves, it's with the pace and the indirectness. He also noted that Iran's fractured leadership needed more time to submit a unified proposal. In other words, he's questioning whether the Iranian officials showing up in Islamabad actually have the authority to make binding commitments. When Trump floats the idea of phone negotiations, or direct contact, he's sending 2 messages at once. First, he wants speed. Phone calls compress timelines dramatically. Second, he's demanding that the real decision makers on the Iranian side step forward. Proxies talking to proxies isn't going to get a deal done. For investors, this is a meaningful signal. Impatience from Trump historically precedes escalation or acceleration. The 2 outcomes feel opposite, but they share the same root. Trump does not tolerate stagnation. The second signal concerns the US naval blockade of Iranian ports. Iran has proposed reopening the Strait of Hormuz on the condition that the US lifts its naval blockade, but with discussions over Iran's nuclear program postponed until after the war ends. The US has rejected this framing. Trump understands that the blockade is working. It is starving Iran of oil revenue and creating economic pain that compounds daily. Lifting it now, without a nuclear commitment, would surrender the most powerful piece of leverage Washington currently holds. Trump extended the ceasefire, while explicitly directing the military to continue the blockade, saying he would keep it in place until a proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded, one way or the other. Iran insists the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear file are separate issues. The US refuses to delink them. This is the central deadlock. And it is also where the next signal will emerge. Here's what to watch: Iran's rhetoric. Right now, Tehran publicly maintains that these are 2 distinct negotiations, but that position is economically unsustainable. When Iran's language begins to shift, when they stop insisting the 2 issues are separate and start proposing packaged conditions, that will be a critical signal that they are moving toward a deal. Now, for the signal that seems completely unrelated to Iran, the Federal Reserve. Fed Chair Jerome Powell announced that he will remain on the Fed's Board of Governors after his chairmanship ends on May 15th, citing unprecedented legal attacks on the Fed's independence. By staying, he blocks Trump from appointing a more dovish replacement to that board seat. So, what does this have to do with Iran? Here's the connection. Trump's core domestic agenda requires lower interest rates. Lower rates ease the refinancing of federal debt and help offset the inflationary pressure of tariffs. The Iran war itself is inflationary. Energy price spikes and supply chain disruptions all push prices higher. A prolonged conflict makes the Fed's job harder and makes rate cuts less likely. Our interpretive thesis is this: a president who is willing to back down on the Powell confrontation, trading a fight he enjoyed for an outcome he needed, is operating in pragmatic mode. That same pragmatism is visible in the Iran signals. He wants a deal. He wants it to look decisive. The blockade, the impatience, and the push for direct talks are all pressure tools pointed at a single goal: a fast, visible resolution. China, one of the world's largest crude oil importers, has been conspicuously quiet. Why? The most straightforward explanation is that China expects a resolution soon enough that deeper involvement isn't worth the diplomatic cost. Their silence is a form of confidence. Confidence that the war ends before it fundamentally reshapes the regional order. Russia's position is more nuanced. While they benefit from energy disruptions and higher oil prices, they aren't stirring the pot. If Russia truly wanted this war to drag on indefinitely, we would see them supplying Iran more openly or making loud diplomatic noise. They are doing neither. Like China, they aren't betting on a long war. Let's step back. On the US side, Trump is using the blockade as leverage and pushing for speed. On the Iran side, the proposal to reopen Hormuz suggests movement beneath the surface. And for China and Russia, there is strategic silence. The signals this week reinforce that both sides want to get to the finish line. The remaining question is sequencing. Does Hormuz get resolved first, or do both tracks move together? That is the next signal to watch. That's our read for today. Signal and Clue is focused on finding early, overlooked indicators for retail investors who want a different analytical lens. As always, nothing in this video is financial advice. Please do your own research. If this analysis was useful, subscribe and leave a comment below. We'll see you next time on Signal and Clue.